Okay, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to be talking about the Transfer Leadership Coalition today. And I am so lucky. Oh, hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Moe. I use she, her, and her pronouns, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Transfer Student Center. I'm very lucky to be joined by two of my favorite alumni. Karina and Bradley are both here, and they are former Transfer Leadership Coalition co-chairs. They have graduated and are doing very cool things now. I'm going to spotlight you for everyone to see. I know, it's exciting. And so I've asked them to just sort of share their experience, what it was like for them to be a part of the Transfer Leadership Coalition, what is the Transfer Leadership Coalition, and what it might be like to be involved. And so we'll tell you a bit about this leadership opportunity, and I'm going to turn it over to them.
Hi, everyone. Excited to share space and to be here to share a little bit about our experience as co-chairs. So I am going to share screen, show a little presentation, but in the meantime, maybe Bradley, we can do like a quick intro. I know we put it in the chat, but just for folks joining us, if you want to introduce yourself, and then I'll share screen and then I'll go after.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Bradley. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm one of the past co-chairs of the Transfer Leadership Coalition from 2020 to 2021. I'm very happy to be joined by my fellow co-chair of the same year, Karina. Go ahead.
Like Bradley said, I was also co-chair for 2021. Feels like forever ago that we were co-chairs, but Bradley and I shared a lot of leadership experiences and development. And this organization sits very near and dear to our hearts, which is why we're really happy to be here and excited to share a little bit about what we did in the past and what the Transfer Leadership Coalition has done in general. So I'll take this slide and talk to you all about what even is the Transfer Leadership Coalition. I will say that this is a very unique org that is something that I haven't really seen replicated too much in other UCs. So we're very lucky to have something like this at UCLA. So I'll read off the definition that we have come together as students to create. It's a collective of student organizations, leaders, and transfer allies who work collaboratively to support the transfer student community at large. So we have 3 pillars, and these 3 pillars are sharing information, collaborating, and advocating to foster a transfer receptive culture at UCLA. And so this is sort of like the mission statement that we have. Truthfully, we like to say that the Transfer Leadership Coalition is a grassroots organization. It really is about networking, meeting with other students, collaborating, and then also recognizing campus partners and stakeholders who will help us in creating a transfer receptive culture here at UCLA for UCLA transfer students. And that is a big definition. We'll break that all down if there's any further questions. But Bradley, is there anything to add before I move on to the next slide?
No, I think you did pretty well. I guess just to go deeper in the definition, when we say like a collective of student organizations, leaders, while we like to think of TLC as an organization, it's kind of a collective of different organizations. So we'll break down what the coalition is comprised of, because it's not just like 1 or 2 different organizations. It's like a whole big community involved in the coalition.
Totally. And this is a slide explaining something a little bit more extra about the Leadership Coalition. Bradley, do you want to take it or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can do it. So basically the TLC is also the student entity on the Transfer Student Success Team, which is an advisory board to the Chancellor and Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, consisted of student leaders and administrators. So kind of the cool part of being part of the coalition is being able to talk to those stakeholders within the university. We get to talk with people from housing, from orientation, from all the different resources and programs that UCLA provides, and we share space within this team in order to kind of give them feedback and how they can improve on becoming more transfer receptive. So, as student leaders, we have the most experience with students. We talk to students on a daily basis and we kind of share our experiences all around. And so, us as co chairs, our job was to relay that information to different administrators within this team. So, it was very great to share space with them. So that way we can advocate beyond in the admin level.
And like Bradley said, we were students, we were undergraduates, and we were able to have opportunities to talk to full-time professional staff members and admin. When Bradley and I were co-chairs, we actually met with the Vice Chancellor Monroe Gordon. We actually also would regularly meet with the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Student Development, Suzanne Seplow, also known as Seppi, who was a really big ally for us during our advocacy work. So, looking back now as alumni, as people who work as full-time staff members, I think it was such a big deal for an undergraduate student to share space and to tell these administrators, hey, we actually have, all this research, observations, and stories of transfer students, and they're important to share, and this is the impact that it's having on students. Really, really cool opportunity, and something that comes with being a co-chair and being a part of the coalition. I think that's everything.
Yeah.
So I can cover this really quickly. I don't want to get too into it. But essentially, the Transfer Leadership Coalition does have a deep history. So in about 2014, this was around the same time that the Transfer Student Center actually, or the Transfer Student Program was getting its start. There's a lot of transfer specific orgs. So I know that there's a lot of incoming transfer students who are watching this presentation right now, and there's actually a lot of transfer specific organizations like Pre-Law Transfer Society. There's like the Transfer Fraternity, which is Chi Alpha Psi. So there's a lot of specific transfer identity ones, and we'll get into the whole list of them. And so a bunch of those groups, those organizations, 10 to 15 of them got together and started talking to each other and saying, hey, like, we'll actually be more effective and if we have consistent advocacy. And so we need to make some type of connection and like share some kind of space. So August of 2014, they got together, they created the Transfer Leadership Coalition. And so all of these different orgs would come together and advocate for a specific goal for transfer students at UCLA. And so ever since then, 2014, which is a while now, there's been co-chairs that lead the organization. There's like, it's grown into an actual board. And then it's even mandated in some transfer organizations to come attend these like leadership coalition meetings. So really deep, rich history, and that you can have the opportunity to contribute to if you become involved with the Transfer Leadership Coalition. Anything to add, Bradley?
No, I think good. Yeah, no, I think the next slide will help us break it down more.
Yeah. You want to go for it?
Yeah, sure. So as you know, Karina was mentioning all these different organizations that came together. So these are some of the founding members of the Transfer Leadership Coalition. So first one I want to highlight, which is another great entity on campus that provides support to transfers, is the USAC Office of the Transfer Student Representative. So the TLC actually ran a referendum during a student election to create this position within student government. So USAC is UCLA student government. So it's a really great way to show how strongly transfers felt about having representation in spaces that we were never a part of before. And another great thing about TLC, is if maybe you aren't ready to be a co-chair or you just have too much on your plate, you can always still be involved in the coalition by joining one of these organizations. So Chi Alpha Psi, that's a transfer fraternity if you're looking to get into Greek life. and want to meet other transfers, that's a great program and entity that they have. Um, there's the Black Bruin Transfer Excellence Program within Umoja, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Karina. Yeah.
Right.
Um, you know, if you feel tied to different identities, there's different ways that you can get involved with transfer. So, you know, there's also the Taos. Oh, it's under ASU. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's been so long. I promise you, if I gave this presentation when I was still an undergrad, I would not make that mistake. So thank you for that. There's also the Filipino Transfer Student Partnership, which I think is under C-Clear. So there's a lot of different ways for you to get involved with the coalition, and also being able to be part of organizations that align with your interests. So like Karina said, if you're like thinking about pre-law, you can join the Transfer Pre-Law Society and still be part of the coalition. If you're pre-med, there's Transfer Med. That's one of the new organizations. So, you know, there's different ways to get involved while still being tied to different organizations. And these are just a few of the organizations that make up the coalition. Over the years, we've really grown into big numbers. I think by the time I graduated, there were about 30 different organizations that were part of the organization.
So, like Bradley said, being a part of the Transfer Leadership Coalition isn't just about being a chair or being a board member. You can also be a part of STOMP, represent STOMP needs, represent the events going on with STOMP, and come to Transfer Leadership Coalition meetings and talk about everything that's going on with that org. So these are just, again, the founding members, and there's obviously organizations that come and go with time, and that, you know, will grow and change in the future. So we have a lot of very proud moments to share about what the Transfer Leadership Coalition has actually done, and what they've been able to accomplish. So this list is by no means comprehensive, you know, and also doesn't speak on the fact about all the collaboration that was done with other offices and spaces like that. So obviously the Transfer Leadership Coalition doesn't take credit for it just like themselves. This is not just done by the Transfer Leadership Coalition, it's done with community. And that's how things actually do get done, is when you have a lot of people organized and passionate about getting needs met. It's definitely a community effort. So we don't want to say that this is accomplishments just done by the Transfer Leadership Coalition, but they're definitely very big highlights. So Bradley spoke a little about helping establish the transfer student representative under student government, or USAC, advocating for the center itself. So many different things that are actually ongoing. So providing feedback for new student and transition programs for transfer orientation, that's actually been something that has been an ongoing project. And so like the fight's still not over. There's so many things that can be brought up, and then there's like future things actually. So we can speak about our experience, Bradley, like what we worked on when we were co-chairs during our time. So this is all done in different years. So the SFAC bylaws, amending those, running a cub referendum, a lot of this history. If you ever have the time, or you're curious to know, Google Daily Bruin articles. There's a lot that that is written about our history and like that. But maybe we can speak about what we did during our time and what we kind of ran with. We wanted to originally work on orientation, but that obviously there is more pressing needs, let's just say, that happened when we were co-chairs. And so that's part of being a leader, was like being flexible and changing to the needs of the community. So I don't know, Bradley, if you wanted to start like speaking about like what we did and sharing maybe that.
Yeah, we can do that. So I think, as you guys know, like 2020 to 2021, that's the pandemic still going on. So Korean and I were definitely hit with some new advocacy items. I think overall, students just really needed support academically and then financially. So one of the things that Karina and I got to work with is, um, besides orientation, we really tried to talk to departmental leaders and also Dean Adriano Galvan, who's the dean of the undergraduate studies. So we really were able to talk to a lot of these administrators to tell them the grievances a lot of students had with how UCLA was handling the pandemic on an academic level. So a lot of the times, um, professors just weren't accommodating in the sense that, you know, sometimes they wouldn't record lectures, sometimes they didn't have subtitles. You know, I know a lot of students at UCLA have a disability, so a lot of the times professors just weren't accommodating in that sense. So um, we definitely talked about a lot of issues that were brought up by students. Um, so that was something that we really had to just take a turn on because, again, a lot of students just ended up coming to us knowing that we were in spaces with these type of administrators to talk to them about these issues. So I think that's one of the big ones that we really got to work on. And I think it really helped us establish a working relationship with a lot of administrators that we previously have never been able to get a hold of. I think as you'll learn, it's very hard for students to reach administrators, even more so for transfer students because we're only here for such a limited time. And, you know, you don't really know who's who and who does what. So that was something that I really enjoyed and liked working on.
Yeah. And again, so many issues came up from the pandemic, and that was a really unique situation for Bradley and I. But and to be fair, really unprecedented. Like, how do we deal with that, and how do we advocate for all these needs? And so what we did, and this is definitely like a proud moment for me, I'm sure it is for you, Bradley, like we did this together. Like, we hosted a town hall, and we were able to have, I think it was close to 200 like students come in to this town hall. It was a virtual town hall, and we were able to have representatives from financial aid, from housing, from so many different parts of campus, and hear real transfer student stories. I mean, some of the stories were obviously very impactful, when these transfer students shared their experience of, I'm really struggling with this, and like I want accountability for this from the institution. And that was something that we set up. We reached out and we helped moderate that panel, and it was a huge success, I would say, because of the amount of people that actually showed up to the town hall. And I remember that being something that uh was needed by the community, and we worked really closely with the Transfer Student Center, of course, as well as with our USAC transfer student representatives, Zuleika Bravo, um, living legend. We love her, and we were all able to come together and advertise that and get, you know, admin to answer a lot of questions about the pandemic.
Yeah, and then last thing that I think was really just really showed the university how strong of a community transfer students really are. So this, I think if you're a second year transfer in this presentation, you may have heard the story. So during spring of 2021, um, the university sent out an email about who's getting priority housing for the following year. So it was going to be 2021 and 2022 school year. And you know, a lot of the first year transfer students who didn't get their housing guarantee because of the pandemic felt like they were left out because originally the university gave priority to like freshmen, sophomores, and incoming transfers. So the first years that were going to become second years felt left out. So that was a lot of advocacy. I think, you know, with spring quarter, like our plan was just to close out the year and like just do some like housekeeping items to keep the coalition going strong. But I think that issue was just so great and a lot of students were in need because it just wasn't about missing out on the college experience. It was a like end all be all situation for a lot of students because they wouldn't have anywhere to live. And transfer students have some of the biggest numbers in housing and food insecurity. So it was a very personal issue to transfer students. So we did another town hall with housing. So the assistant vice chancellor of housing came, Seppi, who we mentioned earlier, people who worked on the Hill, which is what we call the dorm area, like all the dorms. And we just kept writing a letter to administration. We got signatures. We got over almost 2,000 signatures. And I think with how great of a commotion we were making, we got the attention of Vice Chancellor Gordon and Chancellor Block, and we were able to meet with Vice Chancellor Gordon to really talk about next steps on how we can better serve transfer students, because it was such a dire need of change in that policy, because again, students were in fear that they wouldn't have anywhere to live. And I think all of you know Westwood is a very expensive area, so they couldn't just rely on the apartments in Westwood. They had to find a place on campus. So that was something that took a lot of effort. A lot of students really mobilized, and it just really showed the university how strong transfer students are. So, each year we always encourage transfer students to be part of the community because we're big in number. And once they see how close we are and how much we share the same experience, they begin listening. So all the issues that come up year after year, they start listening because they see how much it affects us and impacts our work and what we can bring to the university.
Yeah, totally.
I'm wondering if I can highlight a couple things I know about y'all. Let me see if I can bring myself into the pin. Like, this is really, oh, my Zoom skills have gotten sharp. Excellent. So one thing I want to highlight about this org that you guys kind of touched on, but I think it's extra special, is your relationship to these different organizations in the transfer world and how you're different. So I just want to be crystal clear that at most I view myself as an advisor to the TLC, for example. But ultimately, at the end of the day, something I love about the Transfer Leadership Coalition is the folks who are leading it are really in the driver's seat. No one is telling, like when Bradley and Karina were co-chairs, no one is telling them that they can or can't or need to do something. It's really they're organizing, and it's very driven by what they're seeing, hearing, feeling, experiencing. Would you agree? I'm just making sure. Okay. So like, I think that's a very unique kind of role. And so this is not something that the Transfer Student Center supervises in any way, shape, or form. Being fully transparent, unfortunately, is like a volunteer leadership position because it kind of exists outside of the boundaries of like a couple different orgs. But I will say the thing that makes it extra unique and cool is that they work in tandem with the Transfer Student Center as well as the Transfer Student Representative's office. So the TSR, the Transfer Student Representative, is ultimately like beholden, I can't come up with a better word, to like USAC and student government. So they operate within that framework and that lens, and that's their advocacy space. The Transfer Student Center, of course, is like a paid university office. And so like we have certain responsibilities to the student community and to the university. Transfer Leadership Coalition is kind of outside of that in a beautiful grassroots way, where they have the opportunity to really bring people together, advocate in a way that is different than those other spaces. And I'll say like administrators on campus that these folks have met with asked us like, how's TLC? I love meeting with TLC. They're so great. I love hearing directly from students like how things are going, how the transfers are doing. And so if you are someone that would like to find yourself in a room with high-level administrators advocating for things that the community needs, this is an excellent position. It's very unique. When I tell people about it at other institutions, they're extremely interested in what this group does. And so much so that we actually just presented this past year about the relationship between the Transfer Student Center, the TLC, and the TSR. It's a lot of acronyms. Even for me that works in it, it's a lot of acronyms. And so these students also come to the Transfer Success Team meetings, where there's folks that work across campus in both academic and student affairs spaces, and speak on, like, they get like a standing time slot to talk about what's going on with transfer students. So there's a lot of like really cool opportunities to communicate across different layers of the university and really be a voice and a face for the transfer community, which is a very unique opportunity. The second thing I wanted to highlight, and you all totally hit on this, but I want to really highlight it, which is, I think something that is challenging sometimes for college students, not even just transfer students, but it's extra challenging for transfer students, is the notion of like history. And so something that TLC does exceptionally well, and that I've seen other student orgs or student movements stumble on, is not understanding the historical context in which they find themselves. And so I think that something the Transfer Leadership Coalition also does exceptionally well is passing down institutional knowledge and like cultural knowledge from the transfer community from year to year, so that they can build on what previous transfers have done and really move like transfer advocacy work forward from year to year. And I think that's what makes this particular organization so strong, is they really do a great job of documenting history, keeping record of what's been done, and then really moving the needle forward. And part of that is their own like documents. And then also, like, myself, Karina, and some other folks on campus do have met regularly. Like, we usually have a standing weekly meeting with the TLC co-chairs and the transfer student representative to like talk about anything going on. And then you also have access to like university folks who have multiple years of experience on campus and can say, oh, actually this issue came up 5 years ago and this is how it played out. And so I say that like we're not in any way, shape, or form like telling folks in these roles what to do, but we do serve in like an advisory capacity to help make sure that we're helping to provide that context. And I'll say, like, our director, Karina, has been on campus over 20 years. So we've got a lot of context in the house that we can pull from. And so I think it's a really cool opportunity. So anything else you all, I think you all hit it really well. So we'd love to take a couple questions from you. And then I'll stop the recording in just a second, because I know sometimes people get nervous about asking questions when they know it's going to be on a recording. So I see a question: what's the social media for the Transfer Leadership Coalition? It's a great question.
It's to be determined. To be honest, me and Karina have been out of this position for over a year now, so we did hand the torch to some new co-chairs. Unfortunately, I have not been on campus, so I don't know detail to detail, but to my understanding, the TLC Instagram may have been deleted. I don't exactly know why. Hopefully that's something that we can get back. However, we are on Facebook. Karina, I don't know if you mind sharing that group in the chat.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, I think you and I are still like admin in there, so like we can just accept people as they come in. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I don't know what happened. I would really love to have a better response for you. So yeah, just to be determined. Hopefully when we get it back, we can drop it like in the Facebook group. And then if we can get it back, hopefully like TSR and TSC can like highlight that in their story.
You know we will. I was going to say that's the other piece is, even if it's restarting, this is an org that has had a strong social media presence in the past. And it's a great question, because on the application, so tying your two questions together, there is a spot to designate that you're interested in helping with social media for this group. And so I'll move into the application in just a second. But just know that like the Transfer Student Center, we're very selective about what we share on Instagram. And we have like two orgs that basically have like carte blanche we'll share anything they want us to, and TLC is one of those. TSR and TLC are the two big ones, and then some other transfer specific orgs were like, we'll share, because we want it to be transfer specific. And so if you were moving into this role and you had to rekindle Instagram, we would very much help you with that. Shall we talk apps? So yeah. I'll give a toe dip, and then you all can elaborate as much as you like. The TLC is extremely important to us in the transfer community, but I'll speak for the Transfer Student Center. It is a big, we want to get this in a really like well-organized space this year, and we really want to see this organization thrive. And so we're willing to put in time, energy, applications, whatever needs to happen to get TLC in like a happy place and like organizing again this year. And so we've created like an application. I will say this is unusual. So if you are thinking about applying, strongly recommend it. It's a great opportunity. I think we should go back to like the kinds of opportunities y'all have had because of this, so think on that. If you've had some really spectacular things you've learned or gotten to see. The other piece though is there are like 4 roles within TLC, 4 different roles within TLC in years past. And so typically the Transfer Leadership Coalition uses a co-chair model. So there's 2 people who are the primary organizers every year. Just being honest and candid, usually those folks are elected the year before from TLC members. As far as we know, and I'm pretty confident the answer is it didn't, that there wasn't an election that occurred last spring. So last year was a tough year on campus doing the hybrid stuff. And so we are looking to like reestablish Transfer Leadership Coalition. That being said, for this year only, what we're gonna do is we have an application for all 4 roles. We're gonna interview people who are interested in being co-chairs and look for like complementary skill sets. That's something that's exceptional about Bradley and Karina, by the way, is you two are both very strong leaders, but you also have very complementary skill sets that really played out well on TLC. So we will interview folks who are interested in co-chair, but we do have space to apply to be the other 3 roles. So there is also traditionally a secretary that's kind of like a note taker, organizer, type of person that comes to all the meetings, serves as a note taker, shares out minutes afterwards. I'm sure they also take on other roles, but that is like maybe like a lower time commitment, but like a really regularly committed person. Also connected to that, TLC typically meets every other week throughout the quarter. So it's like, in terms of like broad meetings, it's usually every other week. And they usually take finals week off. So it's typically 4 meetings per quarter that TLC is like the TLC meeting time commitment. The second role is a social media manager. So I'm so glad that you asked about that. So someone who would be doing like communications, potentially publicity materials, and then like talking to folks on social media. The final one is student org liaison. Typically, TLC has more than 1 student org liaison, and they basically volunteer to outreach to student orgs across transfer specific organizations. So you would typically be assigned a couple of organizations and you would like keep them in the loop. So make sure that they're invited to meetings, make sure they know what's going on, because ideally TLC functions best when lots of transfer orgs attend the meeting and sort of represent the positions of folks that they know in their org, although there are also students that come as like individuals to the meeting. But those liaison roles really help spark those relationships with organizations. So those are the 4 roles. I'm going to drop the link to the app. It's short, it's sweet, but it hopefully gets at us being able to interview folks for this year. We're going to share it more broadly on social media and also share the recording that we're taking right now. Before I stop recording, I wanted to ask Karina and Bradley, what do you think the highlight of your experience being in TLC was for you?
Do you want to go first, Karina?
Sure, I'll be thoughtful. The amount of collaboration that I did was really fruitful. I'm gonna always remember Bradley and Zuleika, like moving on from like this role, just because I was able to meet people who were just as passionate about me, about transfer students and our identities. And it's shaped the work that I want to do in the future. I want to be able to work with students who come from low income backgrounds. I want to be able to work with first generation students, students who are formerly incarcerated, students who are veterans, students who are parenting students. Like, these identities are super, super special to me because I know what they are able to bring to the institution. And so having other people to share that passion with was like, wow, I'm not the only one that's like crazy about having these students' needs heard. And so I think that was probably the biggest highlight. And I was honestly, I can get really emotional thinking about that time, because I don't think there's ever going to be a space where I could be an advocate like that, as a student. And then it helped me find my voice as well as a student. So yeah, I think for now, I'm not gonna add more because I just get really emotional and happy about it. But yeah, I'll pass it to you, Bradley.
Yeah, that was a nice response, Karina. Thank you. I like ditto. Trust me, like you, Zuleika, Karina, Paolo, and Sarah, like it, being in this role outside of our small little group of like our transfer triad, it really helped me like meet a lot of great students on campus, create like lifelong friendships. And then I really have to agree with Karina. It helped me find my voice as an advocate. And it also showed me that I can be an advocate outside of spaces like this, always representing people with similar identities with me or just people that come from a marginalized community. Like for example, like post grad, like I'm a paralegal and I work at a law firm in downtown. And, sometimes I feel like with such a old industry, a lot of people are just out of touch with society and just hold on to tradition. So I feel like I'm able to, use my voice as an advocate and really just bring a lot of knowledge to people who need it, I guess. Just being able to advocate, like, obviously in a law firm, you're advocating for your client, but there's different ways that you can do that. So I think, overall, it just really helped me grow personally and professionally. And then, of course, like having Karina, Zuleika, Sarah, like lifelong people that I will remember to this day and further down, like it just really added to my UCLA experience, especially being online. Like it was not fun. So it was like the one like breath of fresh air where I feel like I could enjoy being part of UCLA.
And I have to say that if we're talking about highlights and like what we took from the TLC, I need to share that the institutional knowledge that I learned from being around those kinds of people. By the way, the other Karina that everyone's referring to is the director of the Transfer Student Center, not me. There's Karina Salazar, and she is a walking encyclopedia of transfer student history. So being in spaces like that and learning institutional knowledge, like Bradley and I could probably talk to you all for hours about what has been done in the past, what could be done in the future, what is possible, who we've tried to network with, who we've talked to. Like, I think Bradley knows a lot more about different areas, about transfer student issues and transfer student advocacy. So like, ask us any questions if you ever wanted to connect in the future, because we can really dish out a lot of tea, history, and context about the institution. And it's something that I think is definitely a skill, to be able to relay that and to understand that in the full picture of it.
And on that point, I just want to say that if you're considering applying, the question again I saw about like, is this a volunteer role? It is a volunteer role. I will say that people connected to these folks, we try really hard to get them into spaces, compensation connected to them. I think you both ended up in leadership roles that you were in additional leadership roles that had a stipend or pay attached to them. And so it's not like a guarantee, but there have been also like other folks who have been in similar kinds of spaces where they've been in like leadership type of opportunities. And then I think even more so like in experiences, we really try to put like people like Bradley and Karina like front and center whenever possible. So when we get to nominate students to like speak at events or to represent the transfer community, if that is something that is appealing to you, it is a role that comes a lot of that kind of experience. And I think that it directly and indirectly opens so many doors, you know, like, and even beyond that, like, I know that folks connected to advising, these folks are like more than happy to be like a stellar reference, to be like a great sounding board. We try to really like invest in the folks we're working with in this position and the other like Transfer Leadership Coalition like folks. And we really spend time getting to know them, and these are like a very high priority to like myself, Karina, and other folks on campus to make sure that we're supporting the TLC and the transfer student community. The final thought I had is just know that when so the application is going to be open now. We're also going to share it more publicly. We're going to do, I said for now the application due date is August 22nd. I don't know that it'll actually close then, because if people want to apply for roles outside of co-chair, the goal is once those co-chairs are selected, we'll do some interviews starting after August 22nd to select the co-chairs. And again, we're going to look for complementary skill sets of people who are going to like work well together and really want to outreach to the transfer community. And then from there, we're going to turn it over to them to select the rest of their team, just honoring the fact that usually the TLC co-chairs do get to choose their team. It would be great to have first-year folks apply to be TLC co-chairs. That would be rad. And then the final thought I wanted to leave it on before I stop the recording, and we'll stay and answer any questions for folks here. There's actually a third TLC co-chair in the house now. Zuleika has joined us. And so Zuleika can also provide some insight. But the final thing I wanted to leave on before I end the recorded part is that we're going to really invest in the co-chairs in terms of like training you up, supporting you absolutely every single step of the way. I like to joke that the transfer triad, the TLC, the TSR, and the TSC, we've had meetings where we have laughed. We have had meetings we have definitely cried in all together. I think that we make a really fantastic group, and I just want you to know that if you are considering applying, this is going to be a role where we're going to invest a lot of time and love and support into you to make sure that you feel confident and successful and like you can do this work. And so don't be shy. If you're interested in advocacy work, it's a really incredible opportunity. So if you're interested in the co-chair role, try to apply by August 22nd. And then if you're interested in other kinds of roles, I would say try to apply by like the first week of September. And we are gonna like put this video recording on YouTube so folks can watch it. So if you know other people you think would make amazing applicants, tell them to check it out, and we'll put it on the TS. All the acronyms are messing with my head now. We'll put it on the Transfer Center site. We'll advertise it on the Transfer Center social media to make sure we get the word out. But please help us spread the word. So I'm going to stop recording. Oh, I'm going to hit pause.